Are your kitchen and bathroom way overdue for a remodel? Well, I got the guy for you. Call John Sellers at First Response Contracting, 484-256-7136. Both residential and commercial services, and he's licensed and insured. Call him at 484-256-7136. First Response Contracting.
From real estate to real life and everything in between, The Brad Weisman Show. And now, your host, Brad Weisman.
All right, we're back. We are back. And I'll tell you what, I am super excited about this guest. I found Kimberly through Instagram or one of these places. And, there's certain times where I find a guest and I'm like, you know what, I'm really into this person. Or sometimes I'm like, it's a good guest, whatever. And they're all great. But this one, Kimberly, as I'm researching her, I just kept getting more excited about talking to her today. And her name is Kimberly Spencer. I'm going to give you her bio, and then I'm going to bring her in here to the show. She is 16-plus year entrepreneur. She's an award-winning high-performance coach and trainer. She does subconscious success strategy, an Amazon #1 bestseller, TEDx speaker, health junkie, freedom lover, queen to my king, and a 2-times boy mom, which is cool. Sounds like my mom because I might have a brother. And unsinkable optimist. She's been featured on Netflix, The CW, ESPN, Chicken Soup for the Soul, NPR, Thrive Global, and CNBC and Forbes. Oh, man, I'll tell you, she's been everywhere. So Kimberly Spencer is my guest today. I'm so excited to start talking to her. Kimberly, how you doing?
I'm doing amazing. I'm so grateful to be here with you, Brad. This is going to be fun.
Actually, yeah, this is going to be great. I can't wait. And it's funny, like I said, a lot of times I'm researching, and I just kept digging deeper and deeper on you. And every time I read something, I'm like, this is incredible. I mean, there's so much that you have done in your life so far, and obviously so much more to be done, right?
So much more to be done. In the next 6 months, I'll be having another child, launching our book, Make Every Podcast Want You, and then launching a children's fart book with my 7-year-old.
Unbelievable.
It's just a fart.
That's pretty funny.
Yep.
That's really funny. So you're expecting, you're going to have your third, right?
Yeah. We got our girl, so we're good.
You got your girl. Unbelievable. Were you going to keep trying until you got the girl, or what was going to happen?
No, I was going to cap it at 3.
Cap it at 3. That's good. That's good. Well, congratulations and all the best to you. And you said, how far along are you?
I am in the 2nd trimester.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
There.
Wow. Well, then all the scary stuff is pretty much done right now, which is good. That's good. The main quote that I saw, and all these quotes are from your website or wherever I found stuff, and it really hit me, was the only thing keeping you from having what you want is the story as to why you don't have it. Transform your story, transform your life. That is really profound, and I really like that. How do you come up with something like that? I mean, where'd that come from?
Well, I've always been in the business of storytelling, no matter what industry I was in. Mm-hmm. Like when I first started, my first business was freelancing as a Pilates instructor so I could support myself as a screenwriter. And that experience, I was transforming people's stories about what was possible for their bodies in filmmaking and film writing. Like obviously that's storytelling 101 right there. Yeah. But when you study storytelling, there's only 7 human stories. And when you understand where you're at in your own human story, sometimes failure doesn't seem that final, right? Because there's the next act, or it's this next beat. And what I learned from transforming my own story, because growing up, I had 2 very supportive parents who also had their flaws. My father was a very successful entrepreneur and also a very successful addict. Yeah. And growing up in that environment, I learned through programming that I was broken, damaged, and a victim. Mm. And that was a story that ruled my life for several years in the areas of my body and relationships. And when I transformed that story with my body, that was the first story that I majorly transformed from having a 10-year battle with bulimia to transforming that story within 2 years with no psychological or medical intervention, to where now it's over, I think I'm going on 20 years of like never relapse, never a problem. Like going through first trimester pregnancy, I was like, how did I do this for 10 years?
Yeah, right.
all the joys of that. But it's so interesting because you don't look at a butterfly and think, well, when's it going to relapse back into a caterpillar?
Yeah.
And there's a magic that comes with true transformation when you actually up level your identity. And I've seen this working with entrepreneurs for the past 9 years as their coach. Like that experience, when you transform your own story into an entirely new identity, then there's no going back. Yeah. And that it's really that story that stops us when we think we're still stuck in the same old caricature that really most often wasn't ours, that we created. We created it to please everyone else around us.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's also protecting. It protects you.
Mm-hmm.
It protects you from what you went through. It protects you from having it happen again. Because a lot of us, our past, we're hoping that we want to stay away from it. But yet what's funny is that most of the time it controls us into the future.
It's very hard to drive a car forward looking in the rearview mirror.
Very hard.
Eventually you crash, you end up being in the exact same spot.
Yep, exactly. Absolutely. Yeah, that's amazing. And so you've really gone through a transformation yourself, obviously, coming from the family that you had. And a lot of times I think, too, that people think that as soon as you say you had, when you say you have a supportive family, but they had their flaws, I think we all have parents that had some sort of flaws. So I think that when people think that, they look at somebody else and they go, oh, well, they have the perfect upbringing. They have no idea what goes on behind closed doors. They have no idea. So I think it's another thing is we try to create a story around thinking or having this thing in our heads that everybody else's life is perfect at home. And we just know it's not. Everybody has some type of things that they're getting over. Some are worse than other. I mean, being raised with an alcoholic father. And I watched that video that you had on YouTube that explains your process of that. And then he had passed away, I'm sorry, in 2021, I believe.
Yeah.
He was a tree cutter, right? Didn't he cut down trees or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was a tree cutter and he was the internet's grandpa.
Yeah.
Like he was a YouTube celebrity late in life.
Incredible.
And it's interesting when you talking about collective story, because like so many people would watch his videos online and they would say, oh, he's so gregarious, he's so outgoing. And I would watch them and be like, oh, he's so drunk. Like,
oh, no way.
They were so like my mom and I found, looking back after my father passed, many videos that are out there of my father where he was on this big YouTube show.
Oh my gosh.
Called Elders React, where people so many people thought, oh, he's so fun, I wish he was my grandpa. And my mom and I are watching those and we're like cringing. Yeah. And it's only because we know that person and the show and the mask that was on. Wow. And so often we have performative masks. And I think one of the beautiful things of the pandemic was that it stripped a lot of those illusions away, because we had kids coming in and out of our Zooms with our teams, and those boxes that we thought we had to play into of like, this is my business box and this is my professional box and this is my family box and this is who I really am. But oh my God, if anybody knew that. I have just seen for the past 4 years, layers upon layers of people stripping back into everything, coming into holistic alignment, where they're finding that they don't want to just showcase this little section of themselves because that's what they think is going to be appropriate, because they're dying by not having everybody know who they really are. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, COVID did a lot with that. I mean, seeing how people live. My wife's a teacher, and and a lot of teachers got to see. All teachers got to see sometimes how kids were really living. What was the support system? What was really going on behind the scenes? And there was many times it was very revealing, and you thought that some of these people would maybe try to hide that, and they really didn't. They just kind of exposed who they were. So it made you have a whole new appreciation for how people are living and how people are being treated, So COVID definitely showed a lot of things, as much as it was bad, there was things that definitely came out that were good. And I think you're totally correct on that. So I wanted to get into some of this other stuff here. There was different quotes and different things on your website that really stuck out to me. The stories we tell ourselves are the most profound and usually not true. Yeah, so you could just expand on that a little bit. I mean, I think it's funny about the stories we tell, and usually they're not true. So we're all kind of hiding behind that story.
So I'll tell that story in a story.
Yeah, there you go. But this one's true, though.
It is true.
Yeah, this
I
one's
had a
true.
client who was a very successful doctor, like incredibly successful doctor, started a private practice and was living by a story because, when you start a business, and a private practice is a business, there's different skills. You suddenly have 30 different hats that you have to wear.
Yeah.
And you're not only successful in your industry or your field or the thing that is your genius zone that you went to school for, that you studied and, worked into the late nights for, you're also learning finances, marketing, sales, and all of these other hats. And she was living by a story that she wasn't good in business because she was struggling with the sales, with retention, with team, with all of these things that business owners just struggle with. Like they're a natural
absolutely.
part of the evolution of developing a business.
Absolutely.
But the story was causing her to make decisions based on urgency and immediacy and fear, and constantly needing that next support group, that next coach, that next mastermind, that next thing to support her, because she wasn't trusting herself. Yeah. And once we looked at how she got successful to be a successful doctor, to achieving PhD, like her PhD, and achieving that, we transmuted that strategy into her being a business owner. I said, "You're just in pre-med." And she's like, "What?" And I said, "Yeah, you're just in pre-med business school. Like, that's it. Like, you're at this level with success as a practitioner. Yeah. But your business success is here. You're still you're in the current school of hard knocks of business." And just that perspective shift alone changed everything for how she was showing up, because she gave herself more permission, rather than saying, "Oh, I'm bad," living by this story of, "Oh, I'm bad at business." No, you're just early on. You're just starting out. You're just a beginner. Yeah. Just like you were in pre-med, just like you were in college. Like, and so when we can know this, that's why when I said earlier, like, when we can know the part of the story that we're in, we can give ourselves a little bit more grace and have a little bit more humility, rather than it's pride that likes to keep us up and think, "Oh my gosh, I don't want to be seen as starting as a beginner." But that's where you're at when you start anything new, whether it's writing a book or starting a podcast or starting a business, any new skill set that you add in, you're going to be at a beginner level, and that's okay. Yeah. It's okay to be seen as a beginner, but that's the story of the beginner that I see play out in so many entrepreneurs' lives, because they beat themselves up because they're not there yet. Yeah. And also, I think because maybe what they're doing and what they excel at, they do naturally. And I tell my kids this all the time. You're going to have things that you're naturally talented at that maybe you won't have to work quite as hard, or it seems like you're not working as hard because you like what you're doing. You know what I'm saying? Like when I'm doing these podcasts, a lot of people are like, "Wow, you got to prepare, you got to do all this stuff, you got to get this done and that." Right? Yeah, that's fine, but I enjoy it. I enjoy, the discovery of people. And same thing with that. I think what happens is they don't really like to do the business part, so therefore the story is, I'm not good at the business part, and then that way there's an excuse, and then you can either hire somebody or you can do whatever, or you just end up not being good at business. You know who else is the same way as realtors? I mean, I'm a realtor. Typically we're entrepreneurs. We're 1099. So we have to be responsible enough to know business too. And also lawyers, they say, are not that good at it too. But yeah, doctors are one of those that definitely fall into the category of, a lot of times it's not their forte, but I think it's because they tell that story. And that story it snowballs, and eventually that they end up in financial trouble. And I've seen it with every industry, from coaching to realtors to it is just being able to humble yourself that the skill set to build a business is a new one. Yeah, exactly. When the skill set that you've already mastered, that you're already at a level of mastery at, that's a skill set that people will come to you for. Yes, that's going to continue to get you recurring business and will drive business, but there's still those other principles in the skill set building of a business. Just like when I see people who want to transition into speaking on stages, that's a new skill set being able to have the confidence and craft a message and craft the story and engage an audience.
Yeah.
Those are all skill sets that are all learned. And so it's humbling ourselves to continuously be a beginner, which is why I love the challenge of doing a children's fart book.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, that's why one of the reasons why I challenged myself with that, because I went in and let this hobby, because I don't aspire to be like the next whatever. And so I was just like, I just wanted to do this as a project with my son, to have it be it's his entrepreneur homeschool project.
Cool.
So I wanted him to learn business through this fun project, but also I got to approach it and as a newbie and honor that beginner's mindset and continuously, because every time you go into a room where you're up leveling to a new level, maybe you're getting a bigger deal. Maybe you're going from selling single family homes to you're selling have a commercial property. Like you're going to be a beginner in that space, and that's okay. So constantly training yourself to put yourself in situations where you get to be a beginner and relearn and train those neural pathways. So you're building confidence again in that space and in understanding that you're building a skill set. That is a great way to practice, is through hobbies.
Yeah, definitely. I just heard on something, I forget what it was on. I think it was on the Ed Milet show. Somebody was on there and they said on the other side of discomfort is a new you. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about, is that when we put ourselves outside our comfort zone or outside that area where you're like, oh, I don't know, you create a new you. You become a different person. You're not even the person that went into it. It's somebody else. I mean, so I believe in that stuff wholeheartedly. So let's talk about the fact that you actually wrote a movie. This is like completely different than anything else that you're doing here. But you actually you wrote a movie called Bro, and it was starred Danny Trejo? How do you say his last name?
Danny Trejo.
Yeah. There we go. I was close. Danny Trejo. He's a famous actor, and he actually was the one that starred in your movie. How did you go from all this to writing a movie?
Well, the writing the movie actually came first.
That came first. Okay, so it's the chicken and the egg. So the actual I guess the egg or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, so that was my dream when I was younger. Because I was raised with entrepreneur parents, they had no problem with me dropping out of college 2 weeks before I was supposed to start to go pursue my career in film and Hollywood. They're like, nope, we know you're a hustler. We know you're going to go for it. We know you want, I just wanted to start working, and the college that I was accepted to, even with multiple scholarships, they weren't going to let me work while I was there. They're like, you're going to learn your craft. And I'm like, I'm all about learning the craft, but I also want to learn the business. Yeah. And so I just started networking, and I met my director, who then became my co-writing partner back in 2008. And then he presented me with a project that he was, toying with, that he wanted me to come on as an associate producer because he was going to film it in my hometown of Burbank. And I looked at the original story that he had, and I was like, I think you need a full script. I think we need some character development, some plot development. And I said, can I take a stab at it? And he was like, you write? And I said, yeah, I won a screenwriting award when I was younger. From the Teen Screen Festival. I was like, yeah, I'm happy to let me take a stab at it. And so he gave me my shot. And I'm so grateful to Nick Parada. He's amazing. And so I got to write the first draft. Well, I initially wrote 10 pages, and he gave it to the executive producer, and they said, okay, go ahead, write the first draft. And I was like, okay. So I wrote it, banged it out within 9 months, 9 months and 9 drafts. And then we shot for, I think it was 19 days. Wow. And then within 3 years, that then became a niche motocross movie. I just this year got my motorcycle license. I had never actually ridden and driven a motorcycle before that. It was all research. Yeah, right. But when people ask, how did I write a motocross movie? Because they see me, yeah, right. See my brand. Yep. It does not compute. Yeah. It's very left field. But we all identify with the story of belonging. Yeah. We have all had that situation, whether it's Elle Woods going to Harvard or Superbad or our own high school experience or fitting into the college fraternity or sorority or joining that new firm. We've all had that experience where we want to belong. Yeah. And sometimes I know in my own story, like I was very skilled at doing that in relationships, and I would contort myself into being the person who I thought would be most lovable by the person that I was with.
Wow.
And that experience of learning that, because I wrote it right after a breakup.
It's always good to write after breakups. It's always good to write. Yeah. Especially music. Yeah.
That was a very profitable.
Hey, Taylor's made a really good living of it.
Right. It allows you to identify with this human experience that we've all had. And so when I was able to pull that forth, I said, oh, the story is very simple. It's what is the difference between fitting in and belonging? Yeah. And that's what we led with. That's the humanity of the story. Yeah. Yeah. And there's only about 7 really human stories that we all can identify with. And if any movie deviates from them, there's a reason why they flop. It's because they don't resonate with the subconscious patterns that we have for storytelling.
Only 7. That's crazy, right? When you think about it. Mm-hmm. That's really amazing. So let's talk about the other thing this was interesting. Master coach in neurolinguistic programming. And then you have down here timeline therapy and hypnosis. I mean, you're getting into so many things. Just give me a little bit about what is neurolinguistic programming?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey guys, I want to take a second and thank Comfort Pro. Since 2001, Comfort Pro has been helping customers stay comfortable where they live, work, and play. They have 24/7 emergency service and a 100% customer satisfaction guarantee. If you need help with your heating and air conditioning or indoor air quality, call Comfort Pro at 484-917-1803. Mention the show and receive a free humidifier with the installation of a complete system.
So neurolinguistic programming is basically the science, like the study of excellence and how to model that.
Okay.
And NLP, it works with looking at what is the language and the context that people are saying. And so often I'll hear people say, oh, they're trying. Oh, I'm trying so hard in my business to make it work. I'm trying so hard in my marriage to make it work. Well, your language is dictating your reality. Your word is your wand. And just that word trying alone, that word connotes a lot of effort and not necessarily results.
Yeah.
And so as an NLP coach, I mean, NLP has been used with many politicians, with many great leaders, Tony Robbins studied it. Like I was always interested in NLP. And when I was starting my coaching business, and I knew I had a mindset block as to why my coaching business was struggling, because I was bought out of my e-commerce company at 28, 3 weeks before I walked down the aisle to marry my husband. Wow. I got the idea for my coaching business, Crown Yourself, when I was on my honeymoon, and I leapt off the couch and I was like, Crown Yourself. And my husband's like, what's that? And I said, well, that's the name of my company. And he goes, what do you do? And I was like, I don't know, but it's something like Marie Forleo.
So you came up with the name first and then created more of the foundation around it. That's a little opposite, but that's cool. I like it.
Yeah. But I had no idea what I was selling. Yeah. And so for a year, I was struggling with making money in my coaching business because I didn't know what I was selling. And quite frankly, I was living by a story of failure because I saw being bought out and having a successful exit from a company that I put my heart and soul into for 2 years as being a failure.
That's definitely not a failure.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, that's what we all build businesses for. Is not that you have to sell it, but that you can. You know, that if you need to sell it, it's a plan. Yeah, exactly. That's amazing. So the language. So this is it more subconscious also the NLP? I mean, because we're programming when we say try, we're programming ourselves to not do it, basically.
Yeah. I mean, if you ask anybody if they're going to come to your party and they say, oh, I'll try, like how often do they actually show up?
Yeah, that's so true. And you know, it's something in our culture here. I always feel that, you know, when somebody says they're going to try, oh, well, let's try to get together. No, let's get together. You know, it's definitely something that we use a lot. And really it's a scapegoat. It allows us to not commit to certain things. It allows us to be able to just go, oh, well, something else came up, you know? So that is a big one. That's a big one.
It's a people pleaser version of no.
Yeah, right. Oh, I like that. A people pleaser version of no. That's a good one. I like that a lot. That's good stuff.
It's to make people not feel bad. And so your language is constantly dictating the direction of your subconscious mind.
Absolutely.
Your conscious mind is everything that you're aware of right now. And so your language is making your subconscious mind, who is the go-getter. Your language is the goal setter. Your subconscious mind is the goal getter. You say, I'm trying. It's like, okay, well, let me see. Let me put out a lot of effort to try to find like this, how we're going to make this work. Oh no, it's not working. Oh, bummer. Versus, yeah, I'll be there. Great.
Then your mind figures out how to make it happen.
You figure out how to make it happen. Yeah. I'm going to get that deal. Yeah. I'm going to write that book. Done.
Yeah. Gotcha.
It's a burn the boats decision.
And also verbalizing it makes you more committed also, because your integrity then is involved. See, that's the thing too. If you say try and you don't go, there's nothing that goes against your integrity because you really didn't say you were going to go. Yeah. That's an interesting point. I like that. Very good. So let's go into, you're doing this new thing now called the Communication Queens, which basically has to do with training people how to be a guest on a podcast. Is that correct?
Yeah. And getting them booked on podcasts. Yeah.
Getting them booked on podcasts, which I'll tell you what, that's becoming a big thing. That might be how I met you. It could be how I met you. I call them headhunters, which is probably not the right term for it, but I get at least 5 requests a week, at least, to come on the show. And, I'm just a regular show. I'm no Joe Rogan. I'm no Ed Milet. But what's funny is that, as you do more of it, you see more and more of these people trying to do it, which is great. And I'll tell you that the podcast, area, the podcast community has just blown up. It's incredible. Mm-hmm. So tell me how you're doing this. How are you getting people to become guests?
Well, I mean, we've had to figure out the process when we got stuck in Australia.
Okay.
Because I was stuck in Australia in 2020. We were those Americans who were stuck abroad.
Yeah.
And we were over there and my husband's industry completely shut down. So it was entirely up to me. I had had a virtual business since 2018. And I was like, okay, well, I have great clients and I have a great recurring revenue, but I need still new business leads. And I remembered a podcast interview that I'd done back in 2019 that had resulted in a $10,000 coaching contract.
Wow.
And I was like, what if we just double down on podcast guesting? And so my team and I, we doubled down on it and we ended up stumbling upon our authority alignment strategy, which basically I looked at the podcasts that I was going on that were in my niche, that were in my industry, in my authority, coaching, female coaches, high performance coaches. None of them brought in a single client, but they built my authority. They built my authority and established me as a coach. I then looked at the podcasts that were for my avatar that my ideal customer was listening to: productivity podcasts, successful entrepreneur podcasts, society and culture podcasts. And those started to generate revenue. So after 50 interviews, we generated $70,000 of new business revenue. Now it's over $250,000 in new business revenue just from guest podcasting alone. And that I said, I think I'm onto something. Yeah. And we ended up starting the agency in 2022 because, like any sane person, I had a second child. I just had to start a second business.
Well, of course. I mean, that happens all the time. Yeah, it's very common, very common. Yeah. So is there going to be a third business coming up in a couple of months, or?
I think the third business is the book.
It's the book. Yes.
That is definitely the book. So what we do as an agency is we want our clients to just be able to show up and be the star. Yeah. Because having gone on podcasts, there's a lot of different little micro pieces that go into podcasts. There's the pitch, there's filling out forms, there's making sure you have the right pitch, attached to the right person. There's also making sure that you have relationships. And that's the number one thing that I see people getting wrong when they're getting booked when they're going on podcasts and getting booked on podcasts, is they don't actually build a quality relationship with a podcast host. And if you think about it in terms of referral potential, a podcaster is constantly up leveling their circle of influence. They are constantly talking to new people. You build a relationship that's built on reciprocity and generosity with the podcaster, and you suddenly have a lot more infinite potential rather than those who in other spaces who teach, just go on and convert the podcaster or use the podcast as your conversion tool to get clients. Because I've seen both. I don't agree wholeheartedly with both, though I can't say that it hasn't happened. Like I've definitely gotten clients that were the host of a podcast, but it's not because that's my intention. It's because I'm going on to serve an audience. I'm going on to serve and give value.
Yeah.
And that's what we focus on with our clients, is making sure that they also have a process and a plan in place for follow-up, making sure that they are leveraging, because we work with high-level CEOs making anywhere from $500,000 to some who have had over $100 million company. Like those people, they value their time. And so we want to make sure they're getting booked on the right podcasts that are getting them in front of the right audience, that are serving them, that are allowing them to get their message and their work and their business into the hands of those who need it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, on the other side of it, we're looking on my side, being a podcast, host. It's funny. It's like anything. Everybody can look good on paper. But one of my suggestions is if you're a podcast host, is to make sure you look them up and look at them and watch them on a previous podcast or listen to them, because I've had a couple people that look great on paper, and then you get them in front of you're getting them on this situation here, and they're just not. It doesn't jive, And here's the thing too: not every podcast is going to be great. I mean, if you're a host, not every podcast is going to be great. Not every guest is going to be great. And as a guest, you're not always going to be great either. You might have kick butt with one other host because you hit it off, but you might not be as good with the next host because maybe the personalities just are not there. So it's interesting.
The rapport is huge, and also storytelling. Like podcasts. Those podcast guests that flop, because I've had a top 2% podcast for the past 5 years with Crown Yourself.
Good for you.
Thank you.
Good for you. That's awesome. That's really cool.
And I too have had those guests that I'm just like, is there a vibe?
Is this over soon?
But I also think it comes down to, I've seen consistently, it comes down to, are people masters of their craft?
Yeah.
And are they able to share authentically and give a vulnerable story?
Yeah.
Because conversations rooted in courage create encouragement for the audience. They create inspiration for the host. So it's being able to show up and share your successes and your failures, and share the faults and the foibles and the amazing, fantastic things that you're doing in the world. So it's being able to share more and serve with stories, and not just yes and no questions.
No, and that's the thing. The storytelling is where it's at. Don Maxwell tells that all the time. He always talks about how it's about the story, and that's what actually sells. I'll tell you what, we have to get going. We just went through 30 minutes of conversation like that, which is amazing. That means it was fun. That means it was engaging. So I'm so glad you were on the show today. I appreciate it very much. Tell me, or tell the audience, how do they get in touch with you? Where's all your websites and all that stuff there? Maybe even Instagram channels, things like that. If you could do that, be great.
Yeah. So if you love this episode and you want to learn more, you can head on over to crownyourself.com/podcast and listen to the Crown Yourself podcast and subscribe there on your favorite podcast player. And if you want to learn more about how to leverage podcast guesting as a strategy to grow your business and your brand awareness, then head on over to communicationqueens.com/podcast and subscribe to the Communication Queen podcast. And make sure to get your hands on Make Every Podcast Want You, how to become so radically interesting that you'll barely keep from interviewing yourself, available on Amazon on September 30th, which is International Podcasting Day. You can go to makeeverypodcastwantyou.com and sign up for the waitlist for that.
Well, here's the deal. How about when that book comes out, you come back on again and we talk about it?
I would love that.
That'd be fun, right? That'd be really cool, because I saw the beginnings of it, and it looks really, really cool. I'm excited about it. I love the clothing you're wearing too. It's like all bright stuff that you have on. It's very different than your other marketing, which I think is really cool. It's setting yourself in a different personality, which is awesome. All right, that's about it. We got to go. I'll talk to you real soon, okay?
All right. Thanks, Brad.
All right. Thank you. All right, there we have it. Oh my God, Kimberly Spencer, talk about dynamic, really? She was just amazing. Crown Yourself podcast, crownyourself.com. I mean, look her up. Just go on crownyourself.com, look her up there, and you're going to find out all kinds of information. She's a coach, she's a mentor, she's a neuro-linguistic programmer, timeline therapy, hypnosis. I even think she does Reiki. I think I saw Reiki in there somewhere. So that's about it. I will be seeing you again next Thursday, 7 p.m. All right, thanks for watching. Hey guys, I want to take a second to thank Comfort Pro. Since 2001, Comfort Pro has been helping customers stay comfortable where they live, work, and play. They stand behind their work with a 100% customer satisfaction guarantee. They have 24/7 emergency service, and if you mention the show, you receive a free watchdog maintenance plan for 1 year. Call Comfort Pro at 484-917-1803. 484-917-1803. That's Comfort Pro.